you think about the representation of trans people, men and women, in film and television? Are there any celebrities, particularly that trans people can look up to? I mean, we both like a bit of Britney.
She's not really trans though,
She's not really trans, no.
There are, you know, transsexuals in the media. So I use transsexual, I don't know if other people do, but there are transsexuals in the media who people can look up to, like Candice Kane, who's the first trans woman to play a trans woman in a programme called Dirty Sexy Money. I think that's what we need in the media, is actual trans people represented. I think it's great what the actress who plays Hayley in Coronation Street's done, but having said that, she's not really shown a true representation of a trans person, because she's a genetic female. You know, it gives you, don't give you much hope. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I'm 21 and I started hormones, I'm 23 and I started hormones when I was 21, like, I'm not going to look like a genetic female. Do you know what I mean? Like, and to me, having an actual genetic female play a trans woman is just, it's just not right.
That's what you mean.
Yeah, I think there needs to be more trans people representing that.
Yeah. No, I totally see what you mean. Thanks. Yeah. And we looked at some of those slides, and they didn't, as I say, it didn't take me long to find stories about trans people in the media, and it was hard to find positive ones. How do you feel about representation of trans people in newspapers and the news and tabloids?
I think there's always two sides to trans people in the media. You have the really passable ones who get all the praise and acknowledgement, you know, whereas you have the ones that aren't passable, blatantly, you know, they look like, I'm not being mean, but they look like a man in a wig, a truck driver, and they don't get the acknowledgement that they deserve, and it's because they're not passable. And that's when you have like the headlines like tranny and things like that, and it needs to change. Like, people need to be more considerate, and they need more. They need to be more. What's the word? They need to be more careful with the words that they use and how they portray people. And by portraying trans people in a bad way, it doesn't really give everyone much hope.
I think just on the topic of the word tranny, I would see that as a kind of a slur word. Donnie used it on the programme. Do you feel that's a word that can only be used from sort of inside the community?
I don't think it needs to just be used just by the trans community.
Right.
I mean, I used to hate that word, like when I first started my transition, because it was always seen as a negative, because people used it in a negative way. I think you need to know the right context of that word. Now, I'm always using it in my everyday life, do you know what I mean? I always refer to myself as a tranny because I'm using it in the right context. I guess like the tranny word's our version of the N-word for black people. You know, it's okay to use it in their gang, but if an outsider uses it, they're using it in the wrong context.
Yeah, thanks. And my Transsexual Summer. Well, first of all, what happened with that? How did you get involved in it? How did they contact you?
I started doing YouTube vlogs, like recording my transition, talking about my transition, hormones, etc. And it was a woman called Elaine Stoneham who approached me in February last year, on about, you know, wanting to do a documentary, you know, could she meet me? So I said yeah. And then she did a little interview which got me into a trailer, which then got commissioned. And the whole message behind the documentary really touched me, because I've never seen a documentary which is about actual people who are trans. It's always a case of surgery. You follow them through surgery and that's it. You never get to see their everyday life. And for me, I wanted people... I kind of used it because I was getting a lot of abuse, and I wanted people to see my kind of 50 minutes of fame for me to get my point across, to actually get people to understand me as a person. So I kind of used it for that.
Did you... Well, that's very interesting to say you wanted to use it. I mean, were you at all worried about how the footage of you might be used in a way that you weren't happy with? Did you have any control over the editing about the final programme? Did you have any say over it?
I mean, like, during filming, everything got filmed, you know, conversations, but if we knew that there was a conversation that got filmed that we definitely didn't want to put in, we would then talk to the camera saying we don't want them to use that. I mean, there was something that I was outside of the club that I was working at. People didn't know that I worked in the club. and a guy walks past saying, "Oh, show me your balls, mate," and then I give him a comment back.
That's it, man.
Well, after that, he then came back, and then I said something even worse, and I was like, "No, take it out, do not put that in," because it was a sign of me that I've never used there. But yeah, we did have control.
Right, that's really good. You actually had some say, but that's the filming process. If you said something you didn't want to include, you turned to the camera and said it. Did they consult you over the editing at all?
No, like we didn't really know what was going to get shown, what wasn't. We knew that if there was definitely something we didn't want in, then they wouldn't show that. I mean, like, that they really wanted to film me doing stuff that I wasn't comfortable with, and I said no. I mean, they filmed it, but then I told them I didn't want that, so yeah.
So considering what we've said about the often negative or unsympathetic or just stupid representation of trans people, did you trust the producers of the programme when you agreed to do it? You must have felt comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, you completely forgotten about the cameras. It was just like, it was literally, we've got a family, we've got a bond. I mean, I absolutely love the producers. They stayed in contact with us even after the show. Like, they really did care, and I think that was great for us as well, because we got to be natural, we've got to show our natural side. It wasn't like a reality show where it's false.
And you're on a tour now with some members of the stars of the show. How's your life changed since it was broadcast, if it has changed? Are you still in touch with the other people from Transsexual Summer?
I mean, we're all, staying in contact. Lewis and Donna are like my best friends, and Karen, and we're doing a tour at the moment to raise trans awareness. So we're going into the club scene and things like that, which is amazing. It's fabulous. But also, since the show, I've now been able to get into the education system, working with youth groups and schools to talk about transphobia and things like that, and becoming a patron as well. It's just been amazing. Like, I haven't had one single abuse since the show.
So as well as having, I think you said you've got 5,000 friends on Facebook now. So you're sort of, you've gained some celebrity, but what I think is really nice and useful is you're using it to improve other people's lives, aren't you, in a way? You're becoming a kind of spokesperson. You're becoming kind of involved in trans issues and speaking out against transphobia.
I mean, from day one, like I said, I wanted to do the documentary, I wanted to get my point across, and I mean, I never knew that I was going to get a job out of it, do you know what I mean? Like in the coffee shop, that was real. I was there over a month. But for me, I just wanted someone to see me and feel sorry for me and get me a job. But I wanted to be forgotten about after the programme went out, but it didn't happen like that, and then I got support, and then I had trans people coming out to me and saying how much it helped. And then it made me realise that I might not want to be in the media side, but I can in order to help the trans community, and now I love it.
So you feel you have a sort of responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm representing the entire community, because I don't think one person can represent a community. Not every trans person's the same. You can look at me and Donna and complete opposite, but I think it's good that I can kind of be, I guess, a role model in the community, someone to try and help it.
Sure, absolutely. As I say, you're here as a special guest on a specific module which is called Identity and Difference, which covers trans identity as part of the course. What would you like students to think about or learn about to do with trans identity? What do you think is something that students should consider and discuss as part of that course?
I guess just looking past the whole label and seeing trans people as people. Get rid of that whole trans. I think you just need to be more educated on it. People need to realise, that they do need to use the right terms and things like that, and that, I mean, the best thing for me is if you do have a question, ask, there's no harm in asking, but make sure it's appropriate. I just think people do need to get educated better.
So it's partly about getting beyond stereotypes and realising that there's as many different types of trans people as there are cis people. It's not just
not to judge people by the way they look. You can look at a really passable trans woman, and you can actually forget about them being trans. You can't really see it. I mean, you look at Lewis, and I know Lewis is trans, but I don't look at him that way. but then you've got another trans person who you can blatantly tell, and I think people need to get beyond that. They just need to accept them for who they are.
So it's about getting to know individuals, trans
Yeah.
people as individuals, yeah, sure. So I was going to ask if you could change anything about the way the general public tend to think about trans people, what would it be? You've sort of answered that, haven't you? That to get past the stereotype, get past the label, talk to people, engage with people as individuals, yeah.
I would say just get past the label and look at, I mean, you look at gay people today, it's so accepting. Back in the olden days, you know, it was like a really...
The 70s.
Yeah.
The old days for you.
Really bad, you know, it was like a taboo. And I think with trans people, it's still a taboo. It's kind of like a subject which people don't really know how to go about, you know, they don't really know how to question it. I think people don't like the fact that they don't have an answer to it. You know, they want to know why, you know, we're the way we are. I would like to know why I am, you know, like, it makes life so much easier, but you can't, and I think people just need to forget that.
Do you think things like this are the right way to go, this sort of event and discussion, open discussion where people can talk
about
questions?
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm here with all these amazing people, and they're obviously supportive, and it goes to show that when you sit down and actually listen to someone, you actually get to know them better, and you look at them in a different way.
Absolutely, yeah. I've got one more question, then we're going to open it to the audience, so please think of some questions for Drew. Now, I mean, you came out as a woman in 2007, so obviously your sort of development as a woman was different from some other women. How did you learn style, fashion and makeup? I mean, obviously you look brilliant. How did you, you've got sisters, how did you learn to dress so well?
Oh, well, I've had definitely fashion mistakes, that's for sure. My sisters don't wear makeup, so I couldn't look at them.
Right. But you work in makeup now, so how did you learn makeup?
I just taught myself. I went on YouTube and looked at tons of tutorials. Right. I was looking at the glamour models, you know, I'm really into that whole Playboy look, you know, and I was studying like how they did like a smoky eye and things like that, and I was trying to, you know, interpret that. I don't think I pull it off as well as they do, but I think I try my best. But yeah, that's how I learned, and then, you know, it's taken me a long time. I look back at photos and I had really thick eyebrows and lip liner up to there, you know. But, you know, I've learned.
Trial and error, yeah, like any woman, yeah. Thank you very much, Drew, for that. We'd like to invite you to ask questions in the audience now.
On the clip with you and your mother, obviously it was very obvious that she's always been very supportive. What about your father in all of this, being the sort of man and obviously in the army? How has he taken to this whole thing?
My dad's supportive. I mean, it's taken him a while to get used to it. I think when my mum first told him, like, I think he was kind of just like relaxed because like I'd gone through so much depression, self-harming, you know, anorexia, and I think like they just like, they liked the fact that they had an answer to it. But because my dad never saw me, like he didn't know how I was going to look, so I think he was kind of worried. And when he first met me as Drew, you know, he was fine after that, and he's been there ever since. But because my mum and dad are split up, like I don't see him as much, you know, every couple of months. But yeah, he's taken it really well.
Would you say that the male population are harder to convince of the situation than the females? Females are far more accepting?
Yeah. I think females have that emotional side to them, whereas men aren't. You know, they're very like standpoint, and especially straight males, like they can be funny because I used to work in a bar as a dancer, Lady Gaga impersonator, you know, trying to get people in. The amount of straight males that we got in the club, you know, who fancied me, when they found out I was trans, they was like really like, whoa, because then they start to question themselves and they think they're gay, and it's like, you know, they are a lot more harder to convince. But I think, you know, if people are educated about it, it becomes normal. And I think with men, like they, you know, if they do find a transsexual attractive, they do like, you know, don't know how to react to it, and I think they just need to get past that. At the end of the day, you should, if you like someone, just go for it, do you know what I mean? Yeah. There's too many labels on things.
Just a little footnote, Drew, because we're talking about film and stuff here. Have you heard of a film called The Crying Game? where the soldier, we talk about Army Man, you know, where the soldier falls in love with this beautiful
black or mixed-raced woman. And when I saw the film for the first time, I also thought she's a really attractive woman, and it turns out physically she's a man, and he has to vomit, he's completely shocked. And it's probably the explanation that you just gave, that they feel threatened themselves in their own sexuality when they encounter a transgender person.
These men, these macho men, feel threatened in their own
Yeah.
idea of macho sexuality.